African artist, graphic designer. His name is Chess. And if you just go to a website or just Google Creative Defiance, Creative Defiance, you'll see him, and you will even see these posters. It says, food is a problem. There's one person who's starving to death. Another one, food is a problem. There's a person who can't even move because of their behavior, you know, in terms of food, eating, and so on. It's interesting. So what of the future? The first thing is that the future is not some place that's out there to which you can just walk over. It's a journey. It's a journey. And that journey, you decide how you're going to make and what you do. And that journey will change the destination, it will change you, it can change the world. And that's my take on the future. So it's what CI does, what consumers of the world do, that will in fact make the future. And I'm so pleased that you are beginning this particular journey with a new 5-point plan that includes financial services, that includes sustainable consumption, that includes the digital age, that includes empowerment using the law, and then one more in terms of the food security and food issues, nutrition and so on, which are also very central. I mean, these 5 are an amazing core. But I'd like to add another 5, which you can say is a totally different take. And this is a take on not thinking of ourselves only as consumers, but thinking of ourselves as the well-being movement of the world. And the well-being movement, I call it the well-being initiative. Partly it's taking different forms in the world through the happiness index and so on. But it's simple. You know, the things that we have forgotten completely are simple things like breathing. We've forgotten how to breathe. All that system is up. We've forgotten about drinking water. We've lost the fact that we are one big bag of water, our own body. You know, you're talking about 80-90% that we just water, but yet we're de-linked with water. Instead, you know, we're taken up with Coca-Cola and, you know, what we call Coca-Colanization and everything else in the place. But basic things we've forgotten. Yeah? No, we've forgotten about walking. Yeah? No, we've forgotten about munching. The art of chewing your food until it disappears in your mouth, not taking it down so that it's stored like an army munitions dump, you know, in your stomach, and takes 48 hours to digest inside there. And on top of it, you later eat fruit, which should be eaten first because it disappears very quickly. You eat it at the end, and all that remains on the top and ferments and creates gas and acid. You know, I mean, we've forgotten simple things. And over 100 years ago, we talk about diets, we talk about nutrition. One of the greatest promoter of a whole new way of eating was a Mr. Fletcher. And he became a millionaire giving talks on how to deal with nutrition. And what was his formula? Munch. Meat you must munch so many times, other things you must munch. And the whole culture of just munching, called the munching diet, chewing, you know, out there. You know, and he became a millionaire. You know, this was before Atkins diet and all the other kinds of diets we're talking about. And it's, if you Google Fletcherism, you'll learn a little bit out of it. Sheer serendipity. I even found his book, original book, in a second-hand bookshop in Penang. Like I said, it was destined to find me. Yeah? And so I had been talking about him for a long time. But this is his original book, I think published in 1926. Yeah? And he went around the world. I mean, he went even to England to speak and talk about it. So, and the last one is, anybody from Spain? In Latin America, of course? Yes. The siesta. You know, taking time for the resting of the mind for a short while. Yeah? A 15-minute break, you know, and learning how to sort of calm down and taking the short nap. We've forgotten those kinds of things. Yeah? So these 5, I call that the Panchasila of well-being, you know? Breathing and water and munching, you know, and walking and napping. Yeah? You allow, if you haven't had, you can have a siesta here. So just close your eyes and There are many ways of achieving these type of things, but for consumer movements, don't only think of the products. Think of this whole new movement where we can go back to our soul, we can go back to our roots and look at the fundamental things that in fact can transform us and can transform the world. The second is also for the future. The movement, as Helen mentioned, is not just about rights, it's also about responsibilities. And we also drafted a charter of 5 responsibilities, we call that the Panchasila. Okay? But in addition to even the responsibilities, it's a third R, and that's relationships. All movements need to have an ability to empathize, to have empathy, to be able to feel for each other, to be able to see ourselves as a community. You find many social movements destroyed because they become bureaucratic, they become, silo, they are disinterested in you as a human being, although they're supposed to be a movement, they become very autocratic, they take on a very task-oriented system. Of course, we need to be competent, we need to be very creative, and we need also, at the same time, to be a community that cares and links together. Because if we have that caring, we have that relationship, then you'll find as a movement, you listen to each other. Then you begin to grow. Your group grows. If you find some people crying for help, you can hear them cry. But if you're not one of those persons who has feelings, who has empathy, you don't even hear the cry. You just no longer, the Swedish have a term for it, it's called Miko. My eyes gloss over, you can totally wipe out those kinds of things out of your life, and even if they're occurring just very close to you. So you need this third R of relationships, and building up these kinds of bonds as individuals, as organizations, through issues, was a very important element. And that's why IOCU became 1,000 times larger than itself. How did we become 1,000 times larger than ourselves? Why? Because we had that relationships. We took issues, we combined with women's organizations, church organizations, labor organizations, people who are interested in development all over the world. We connected with institutions, we connected individuals around issues. We had our identity, we had our cause, but one of the greatest things that we had, which is our central asset, unlike any other movement, we are a movement that involves everyone. That's the wonder of it, because everyone is a consumer, which is what President Kennedy said in his speech. Everyone. And that makes us, that everywhere we went in the world, when we were doing work on protecting breastfeeding, fighting toxic substances, looking at drugs that are, should not be allowed in the market or misused and so on, and it continues to be a huge problem at the present moment again. We linked up with hundreds of organizations all over the world through what we call networks, love affairs we call them. And we had ways of working together with common causes and clear objectives. And everybody respected IOCU because we gave them something that very few other organizations, we gave them connectivity, we gave them inclusiveness, and we had that wonder of representing everyone. And because we had that feeling, we were regarded as a caring organization. It's the organization that if anybody wanted to bring diverse groups that were quarreling together around an issue, get Consumers International to bring them together. And we could. And we did that constantly after that. So this whole question of relationships becomes important. The other is a new term, and this is a term, is there anybody from Holland here? I spoke at their anniversary, I think 20, 30 years ago, and I told them that one of the things we need in the world today, this was in '87 after the Madrid conference, is a terminology called the consumer conscience. A consumer conscience. That is, we feel a certain responsibility about what is right and wrong in society. And then where there is injustice, we should assert ourselves, we should stand up, and we should make ourselves heard, and we should join other people that we need to in order to make the differences. So this consumer conscience idea could again be another thing, because if that is strong, you will not go wrong. Your soul, your movement will always be guided in the right path. Of course, you have to have an agenda. And there are 11 things that I had suggested to Alan in my speech in Hong Kong. And she mentioned some of them. I talked about exposing crimes against the consumer, talking about a state of the consumer report, talking about how we can take the UN guidelines. And I talked about one thing, again, very important, which we missed. I suggested that nearly 30 years ago. And that was that we should set up a school of consumerists where we train people in the next generation. We train what I call multipliers. And for every movement, when we started those networks, because many of us were not used to each other, we actually had training programs for a whole generation. We call them the next generation of activists. So we had the first international training program for young consumer activists, funded by Consumers Union of Japan. Is anybody here from Japan? Consumers Union of Japan funded that, and we had a training program for the first time, and that led to a book called Doing It Ourselves, which is a kind of manual. So we need that particular track, because any movement to have a future has to systematically organize young people to become inspired and motivated into the movement. Otherwise, we just become a bureaucratic kind of civil service kind of movement that some people are, coming in, and you hope you recruit some people might get interested, but you are not harnessing the most amazing energy. And young people are looking for things to do. They're transforming things in the environment movement. They're doing so, and I think we can do that for consumers. So some kind of project, I call that project multipliers. I will write all the 11 out and send them to you again, Helen. And I will do that every Consumer Rights Day for the next 5 years. So this way, I think if we think of the future, invest in the future, invest in the young people. And if you do so, then you will have a future. Thank you very much, and Assalamu alaikum.